Hey everybody, welcome back to Paulius Gaming. My name is Paulius, also known as Paul, and today we're playing a little bit of Kerbal Space Program where I'm hoping to show everyone how to get to the motherfucking moon. So let's get this started. Let me start my special YouTube channel save game. Now, I'm not actually going to go through the building of the rocket here for the simple reason it takes a very long time. Everyone who's played this knows how to build rockets. What I will do is take you through some of the special features, well, the special feature of the rocket I'm using. The rocket is called This Bitch, as in let's get this bitch into orbit, let's get this bitch on the moon. So let's start from the top. We have the usual one-person pod with, of course, the parachute for the return, because let's be optimistic. We also have the decoupler, an advanced SAS, a stubby short fuel tank, and then I think for that stage of the rocket we have the LV909, because that's mostly for when we're in orbit and we're landing and taking off from the moon. Doesn't need a lot of power, needs to be efficient. Of course we have the landy legs, and I haven't actually bothered with much of a ladder on this one. It is just the what are they called? Let's take a look. Is that under utility? Yeah, these ones here. The Pegasus 1 Mobility Enhancer. Now, if you're planning on landing on other planets, you will need a ladder to get your Kerbals back in the spaceship. As we're on the moon, between the jetpack and just being able to jump, they can do it. Now, for our main stage, we have two of the longer rocket engines, which I believe, at least on mine, are on the second page. The FLT-800, going down to the, let me see which rocket that is, because I've forgotten, because I built this a long time ago. It is the one that doesn't have the thrust vector in it. Is the LV-T30. It is the same as on all of these, and it's basically the I know it says 6 stages here, but it's essentially a 3-stage rocket. On launch, all of these will burn to get us up into orbit, then these will detach, this will get us to the moon, and then we have the top as a lander. The only thing that is even slightly fancy about this rocket, which is a great tip I picked up from Scott Manley, if you really want to know how to play this game and not just what I call the brute force method, go watch his videos. The guy's a genius. I think he is actually one of those science type people, so let's all distrust him and trust in the Lord. But yes, that was a joke. I am not a religious nutter. And that is these things here, which are under propulsion on the second page. It is the external fuel duct. Now what this does is each of these outside engines or fuel tanks feed fuel into this center one as it's going up. Now the small downside to that means that each of these engines, each of these fuel tanks is essentially powering 1 1/4 engine, basically the main one it's attached to, and sending fuel to this one. The downside is it means these burn out a little bit quicker, but the huge upside is once these detach, the main stage here still has a full fuel load. So what we're trading off is if all of these fired at the same time without these would all burn out at exactly the same time. So unless my maths is wrong, which is a very high chance it is, we're losing I think 20-25% of the burn time on these in exchange for a full fuel load. So now I've got the really technical stuff out the way, and that is as technical as this video's probably going to get. Let's get this bitch into orbit. And there's already debris on the launch pad from when I did my test before I started recording. Now I'm going to assume that if you've not really played this game before, if you need help on how to get into orbit and all that, there's tutorials online. This whole video is essentially going to be the brute force way. You can do the maths, you can do the ultra efficient way to do everything. This is what I call a brute force rocket. It has got 3 times the fuel it needs to get to where it's going. Ridiculously overpowered. We don't have to worry about efficiency. So of course the first thing we're going to do is throttle all of the way up, turn on our SAS to keep us nice and straight, and off we go. Now one of the other things I will point out is not on this rocket is any RCS whatsoever. Basically because we only really need fine control when the lander's landing, hopefully, and RCS is overkill for a lander this small on the moon. If we were landing on a planet with heavier gravity, yes, you'd need it. But given that all the maneuvers we're going to make, we've got a good 20 minutes to actually do them without time acceleration. these things turning around a little bit slow is not a big deal. Now, one of the other things, getting into orbit, once you get up to about 160, start to throttle back a bit. Once you get above 200 meters per second in the atmosphere, all you're really doing is pushing against the atmosphere, which means you're burning up a hell of a lot of fuel for basically nothing. It's why burn up the fuel in the atmosphere to get a few extra meters per second when you could actually take it with you. Again, with this rocket, it's not a huge deal, but okay. Now, at this point, we're starting to get up to 10,000 meters, which is when we want to start to do our gravity turn, which essentially starts putting us into orbit. So I'm going to turn off SAS, and as we're going to the moon, we want to leave at 90 degrees. Now, the way this rocket's designed with those fuel ducts, it will start to spin a little bit, but it doesn't really matter as long as the engines are pointed in the right way. Now, again, the super duper efficient best way to do this is to time it perfectly, gradually turn over, keeping the nose of your aircraft, which as you can see on the gravity ball here, as close to your direction of travel as possible. I'm also going to throttle up now because we're getting out of the heaviest atmosphere and want all the speed we can get. But again, this is an overpowered rocket. It's got a lot of fuel. It's far easy just to put it at 45 degrees. And if we turn to our map view, we want to end up in a parking orbit, which is roughly 100,000 meters up. So we're going to stay at 45 degrees, wait for this to get to 100. And that was the sound of our engines, that fuel burning out. So as I said before, as you can see now, we still have a full fuel load in this bitch. So let's tilt over a little bit more, make sure we're at full throttle, turn the SAS back on to keep us on a heading while we're looking here. And once this gets up to 100, now again, this isn't a perfect takeoff. It should never take you more than a minute and a half to get to apoaps. It means you've not got enough actual speed to begin with. But now I've cut the engines, we're almost out the atmosphere. Again, I'm not doing this the most efficient way. If you're one of the people who plays this game properly and not the crap way that I play it, yes, I know there's far more efficient ways to do this, and right now you're shouting at your screen telling me I'm doing it wrong. Well, yes, I know, but the point of this video is to get to the motherfucking moon, not to get to the motherfucking moon with the absolute maximum amount of fuel and all of that. Because as you can see now, this is very shallow. If I'd have done this properly, this line would now be reaching here, and we wouldn't need quite so much of a burn when we get to the apoaps. I'm going to keep using that word. Apoaps is basically the highest point of your orbit. Periaps is the lowest point of your orbit. There you go, you learn something every day. Now, this I usually eyeball, again, brute force method, but let's do it properly. I'm going to add a maneuver at the apoaps to circularize the orbit. Now, again, to get to the moon, the only things you really need to worry about with the maneuver nodes is these two green ones. That's your prograde vector, which is the direction of travel of your orbit, and this is your retrograde vector, which is basically turning your ship around and basically acceleration and slowing down. So what we want to do is circularize the orbit. So at the apoaps, we're going to burn straight horizontally until we see here. Go away. Oh, go away, tooltip. Let me zoom out a bit more. That's at 133, so that's a little bit too much. We're going to drop that down until we got 100, 109, 106. Do you know what? That's close. Again, we're only going to the moon. If you're trying to get to other planets, you need these kind of things to be as accurate as humanly possible. Or should I say Kerbally possible. But when you go into the moon, it's a very big target that is very close. If you miss a maneuver node, like as seen now, this is a 1 minute burn in 13th, which I've completely missed. This is too late, but it doesn't really matter. As I said, the moon is a big target that's very close. If you miss it by a good bit, it's not really going to affect too much. Because one of the other things I want to point out to the maneuver node system in this game, it works, so it's, I'm not going to call it a bug, but the way it works is it assumes that you can do instant velocity changes. So if it says that you're a maneuver node here, that's coming up in a minute, and it says it's got a 20 second, you need, oh, in fact, let me bring up the maneuver node, it's easy to explain. As you can see now, to get up to speed, we need, at this point, an extra 500 meters per second. The way that maneuver node works is it assumes that as soon as you reach that node, you can accelerate to that speed at that instant, which, because of the laws of physics and not wanting to have your Kerbal splattered against the back of his own command pod, is absolutely fecking impossible. So let me cut the engine. Let me see. Yes, this is ridiculous. I have completely ballsed this up, but as I said, it doesn't matter. That is, what have we actually ended up with? A periaps of 77 and an apoaps of 160. Okay, I think I'm actually going to fix that. It's going to burn up a bit of fuel, but who cares? So, and it's a good opportunity to talk about the way orbits work. Anything you do on an orbit, any maneuver you make, affects the other side of the orbit. So we want to bring that down. So what we're going to do is we're going to now, well, first of all, I'm going to kill the maneuver node so it's not getting in the way. I'm going to wait. I'm going to boost until we get to there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop just before it to give myself time to set up. And if you watch the nav ball, I'm going to turn retrograde, which is basically opposite the direction of travel. So what I'm going to do is slow the orbit down. And because the maneuver you make on this side of the planet affects the orbit on the other side, which sounds complicated but will be very easy to see once I actually set this up. What this is going to do is, by burning retrograde on this side of the orbit, it's going to lower our orbit on the other side. So let's turn the SAS on to keep us pointed. So as you can see, that's 160. As I start to boost now, that is going to drop. That's 108, that's about right. So now, because this is 77, we want to bring this up to match. My viewpoint is making this a little bit difficult to see. So come on, hurry up, Mr. Space. The amount of time acceleration you can do varies depending on how high up you are. And at the minute we're pretty low, so it's not letting me go above 50. So there we go. This is now 108. What we want to do is have the periaps match it. So what we're going to do, which luckily is already done because of the way orientation works in this game, we're going to turn prograde, so we're making the orbit faster to affect this side. So now when I boost, you'll see this start to rise. Once it gets to about 100, I am going to kill. So now we got 108. In fact, let's just try and make that circular. Good visual tip is, because it's highest and lowest, as they start to equalize, they will switch around and change places. So as you see them change place, you know that you're close to where you are. So as you can see, we're at 108 there. Go away, maneuver node. 108 there, 105 there, which in interstellar terms is a nice circular orbit. So I'm going to try and keep these videos a little bit, I know there's a hell of a lot of stuff to go through. So what I'm going to do is, now that we have made a nice curve in orbit, I am going to end the video there, and next time we'll talk about doing an orbital transfer to the moon. So I'm going to probably post all three of these videos together. It's just, I know from my stats that anything over 10-15 minutes people lose interest and turn off. I like nice bite-sized chunks. So the next video should already be up, unless you've got this just as I've uploaded it, in which case it is currently uploading and you can see it soon. As always, if you like the video, if you'd like to see more, please give me a thumbs up or subscribe. And if you don't like the video, kindly go screw yourself. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.